Okay, there she is. Perfect. All right. Who is a liminal dreamer in here? What do you guys know about liminal dreaming? I know I just asked you about lucid dreaming. Yay!
Hello.
Here you are.
Here I am.
Jennifer. Awesome. So this is Jennifer Dumpert, and this is the series that we're doing. This is episode 17. I do this series going live on Instagram with dreamers around the world, and today I'm interviewing Jennifer, who is the author of Liminal Dreaming, Exploring Consciousness at the Edges of Sleep. This book is so gorgeous. The cover is amazing as well. But the inside is where the juice is. So Jennifer, do you want to give a mini intro to yourself as well?
Sure. I am a West Coast-based writer and speaker. I talk about liminal dreams, which are the dream spaces between waking and sleep. I also do a lot of work with Oneirogens, which is any root, herb, sound, scent, whatever that promotes vivid dreaming. I have a monthly group, and every month we explore an Oneirogen. I have a monthly dream circle. That's pretty much me.
Awesome. And I know you are doing some group stuff today, so thank you for hopping on here with the change of time zone and everything. We're super happy to have you.
Right.
Cool. Well, let's dive in. So I know you gave like a little bit about liminal dreaming, but tell us, like, for the people who no clue, like, what is liminal dreaming and what is it not?
Okay. So that's actually, what is it not is a great question. What it is, so there's a space between waking and sleep that everybody goes through. You know, there's in the, 8 or so brainwave states, objectively brainwave states that we all go through every 24 hours. One of those states is the liminal dream state. Hypnagogia as you're falling asleep, and hypnopompia as you're waking up. And it's a space between waking and sleep that's both waking and sleep and neither waking and sleep. So you access dream states, you're in a dream state, but your conscious mind remains online. It's a very unusual state. And so that period of time when you're falling asleep, or if you're just really sleepy and fighting to stay awake, and you start to hallucinate a little bit, or maybe you hear something strange, or that kind of thing, that's hypnagogia. In the morning when you're waking up and there's that very drifty time when you're like, I'm waking up, I'm starting to form a thought, oh wait a minute, no, that has turned back into a dream, that's hypnopompia. So the subjective experience is this dream state, but it's not like REM dreams. It's not like there's me in the world. It tends to be more just a kaleidoscopic swirling narrative, and all there kind of is that narrative. So it's a very unusual experience. What it isn't is it's different from lucid dreaming, because in lucid dreaming is much more like being awake, except it's weirder. I mean, and the conscious mind does step forward in the dream, but you're still a self in a world. And in lucid dreams, you have a certain degree of control over the dream. You can walk through, doors, or walk through walls, or anyone can walk through doors. You can walk through walls, whatever, fly, those kinds of things. Liminal dreams are actually quite difficult to control. They're very fast moving. In fact, it's really hard even to track everything that's going on in a liminal dream.
Love that. It's such a great description. And I know, like, some people use liminal dream work to enter into the lucid dream space, but maybe we can go into that in more detail in a little bit. But I wanted to make clear for everyone, like, liminal dreaming are dreams that, like, everyone can achieve, right? Like, people who are tuning into this can go try one for themselves after listening to this conversation.
Yeah, and actually one of the lovely things about liminal dreaming is it's very easy, because everybody is a natural liminal dreamer. I mean, everybody goes through liminal dream space. I mean, like I say, objectively, in terms of the brainwaves, I mean, it's the shortest brainwave state we go through without training. I mean, I have trained myself to spend hours there, but normally we only spend a few minutes there. But so, for example, that time when you're falling asleep, when your arm jerks or your leg jerks, that's how you know that you're in a liminal dream state. Mm-hmm. And one of the real common responses that I get when I'm teaching is people saying, "Oh, wow, I didn't know that was a thing." You know, I mean, sure, I go through that, you know, I know that experience. I know that experience of drifting off and the hallucinatory, whirling, crazy, you know, free associative state. I just didn't know it was a name. I didn't know it was a thing. I didn't know I could expand it out. I didn't know I could go into that. And you can. And actually, if anybody who's listening to this now, if you haven't actually consciously noticed yourself having the experience of a liminal dream, hearing me talk about it is actually probably enough, and now you'll have the experience. Because
sometimes it's as simple as knowing like those little jerks, like it's happening and you're like, oh, okay, like that's enough for your brain to tune in and be like, oh, this is something maybe a lot of people tuning in actually do pretty regularly. Cool. Well, tell us a bit about you, like what was your journey with this? What got you into dream work, and why did you choose to specialize with liminal dream work in particular?
So I've been an avid dreamer my whole life. I mean, a lot of my earliest memories are dreams. And I was, you know, as an academic, I was speaking at, you know, conferences and that kind of thing. And then I started, there was a real watershed dream that I had when I was 22, when I was living in Paris, when I first, and I was really broke, so I slept a lot, and it was winter, so it was like long night. I first started to map the spaces in my dream and realized that I visited the same spaces often in my dream spaces, which is a pretty common experience. A lot of people say to me, oh, I always go back to these same places. I'm like, yeah, a lot of people do that. And then I started to map those, and then I started to realize that not only did the spaces themselves have some constancy, but the self that I am in my dreams also has some constancy. It's a slightly different self than this waking me. And then I started to get really interested in dream spaces. A lot of what my work has always been is been coming up with practices, inventing practices, and writing about practices. I have a chapter in the book about practices. So I started creating practices based around dreaming and writing and speaking about that. And then I started this, the Oneirogens, which is a group where we work with Oneirogens. You know, so like last night, my Oneirogen exploration group was working with galantamine. And we have, you know, I have a monthly dream circle, which is free, although people do have to enroll for it. You can find out about it on my website at urbandreamscape.com. And so there's so I started doing this, I mean 12 years ago now, actually. I started this dream exploration group, and I was also doing a lot of work with lucid dreaming, and I worked with Stephen LeBerge, and I was teaching some lucid dreaming and really deep in that space. And then I had I had a real watershed dream where in which I was like awake and lying in bed and cold, and I had the experience that is an experience I'm not quite familiar with, where your body can fall asleep before your mind does. You know, I was asleep, but my mind was still kind of online, and I was having this dream that was a different kind of dream. And I thought, wait a minute, this kind of dream, I have this kind of dream all the time. What is this even? So I started exploring liminal dreaming, and fascinating to me because everybody does it every day, and there's so little written about it. So that's kind of how I got into that topic.
Cool. And then was it something in particular about the liminal dreams that just like really grasped your attention with it, that drew you directly into that field?
For sure. I mean, liminal dreams are really weird. I mean, they're so unlike other experience. You know, I mean, and dreams themselves are really weird, but in a dream space, you're still, I mean, you know, sure, I might be, you know, I might be with my squirrel family on Mars, you know, whatever. But at the time that it's happening, it's quite credible. You know, I'm still believe that I'm, you know, up in the trees and Mars, you know, with Rocky the Flying Squirrel, whatever it is, you know, and but in liminal dream space, it's just really, really different. The experience is really different. The you know, and it's actually almost more like a psychedelic space than it is like a dream space.
Yeah.
You know, is the way that your consciousness is, and so it's such an unusual state of consciousness that I really got engaged in it.
Cool.
You know, to it and started researching and realizing all the different ways people have used liminal dreaming for various purposes. Yeah, I was definitely hooked.
Can you share with us like maybe a recent liminal dream experience or like a favorite one that you have that will give people a bit of an idea of like how liminal dreams are?
Sure. I mean, I actually can share a very recent one because this month the group is working with galantamine, which was first given to me by Stephen LaBerge, and people often use it for lucid dreaming. It's an alkaloid that works with the concentrations of acetylcholine, which is a neurotransmitter that's really involved in dreaming. And so, and it's often used for people with dementia, Alzheimer's. And so it's, you know, it's good for lucid dreams, but it's also great for liminal dreams. So if you take, and, you know, it's also in organic form as red spider lily or as snow crocus. And if you take it like 20 minutes before you go to sleep, it can really amp up your liminal dream, your hypnagogic experience. That's the one as you're falling asleep. Mm-hmm. Nights ago, because I think we're doing it every other night. I guess it was Saturday night. I was working with galantamine for liminal dreaming, and so I took it 20 minutes before sleep, and it was just this parade of liminal. I mean, I kept like leaning over to write them down, and I finally stopped because there were just so many. And one of them, my spouse. And he had tried it too. He doesn't remember his dreams so much, but for people who don't remember REM dreams, hypnagogia is often their dream space. It has to do with circadian rhythms. I can explain that. And so during the night, we were lying back to back, and we put the soles of our feet together. I mean, not consciously. That's just what happened. And then through where the soles of our feet were touching, there was this incredible sort of vibrating, intense feeling. And I could feel my consciousness whoosh into his consciousness and his into mine. And this, you know, this crazy sensation of having us kind of like, you know, rolling over in the dream space. So that's a good example.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and a lot rolling over in the dream space. So that's a good example.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and a lot of times there's really like this kind of 4 levels of hypnagogia, and there's a lot of visual patterning and color, you know, like maybe carpet color or just a little snippet of a voice, somebody saying something in my ear. But because it's, you know, because it's moving so fast and you know, going, you know, sort of this swirl, it's hard to really get everything that's happening. So I can often pick out little bits, and I've talk through my hypnagogia, and you know, and that's, you know, when people are talking in their sleep, often, not always, sometimes it's in REM, but often they're talking through their hypnagogia. So I can kind of narrate what's happening, and I actually have a sound cloud where you can go and you can listen to a lot of my hypnagogic dreams, just kind of mumbling through, and again, there's a lot of word play, that kind of thing.
That's really awesome. I'll have to put all your links when I post this to your group and the SoundCloud. I'd like to listen to a few of them. I know my husband definitely does that. When he falls asleep, he starts kind of in that early sleep stage, just mumbling things, and I get a rough idea of the weird dreams that he's entering into. We have a really good audience question from Arthur Lucid Virtuality on Twitter, who says, what are your favorite Oneirogens for amping up liminal dreaming? And do the particular ones you use, like galantamine, do they change the characteristics of the liminal dreams as opposed to just like helping you induce them or increasing the frequency?
So yeah, different ones do different things. Do they change the quality of it? I mean, it is such a shifting creature in of itself. I mean, definitely they'll change the frequency of them. I mean, I guess so galantamine is a really good one.
Yeah.
For example, galantamine will often kind of emphasize the physical parts of liminal dreams. So so for example, another thing that happened the other night is I was just in the dream. I had an intense itch like everywhere. I was so itchy. It was insane. Like it was like I was in an anthill or something. And I was like, and then I woke up and it just was completely gone. So or that vibration or and the same way that and also Kalia Zakatiti, which is another great Oneirogen that's often used for lucid dreaming. It's used by it's a weed really, but herb used by the Chantal people of southern Mexico and northern Guatemala. And it's the idea that when you go to the dream realms, the gods or whatever give you wisdom, and it's very difficult to bring wisdom because you forget. And so it's to help you remember the wisdom that you get in dreams, but it gives you really sensorially rich dreams. So sound and smell and taste, and it has the same effect in liminal dreams. Like it will give you really like whenever there's a scent in a dream, I always note that because that's pretty unusual. Even though your sense of smell never goes to sleep, it's great on ends. Galantamine definitely makes for like a lot of liminal dreams and maybe pretty fast moving, fast changing. One of the reasons that I like teaching at festivals, giving workshops and such at festivals, is because in a space where people are working with other with psychedelics or other sort of plant allies or chemical allies or cannabis, there's the arc of a high, and when you're on the way back down, and after you've peaked and you're not back down to base level, but definitely getting there, that's a great time to find hypnagogia. Sort of like close your eyes and loop into that space, and so it tends to open the space quite a bit, so you can really go into it that way.
Cool, that's awesome. And I know, like, for people using galantamine for lucid dreams, lots of people will use it for napping. So Amina had a really great question about that, saying like, can you take it for a nap and go into a liminal dream, or is it best like in that stage right before bed, or how about like using it for wake back to bed, that kind of thing?
No, it's great for naps, and actually napping is one of the best ways to explore liminal dream space, because when you're in a nap, so at night when you're going to sleep, you go through the hypnagogia, but then you fall asleep. So people will often say to me, "Hey, well, I remember that I was having a lot of amazing experiences, but that's all I remember," because then you go into dream space. So if you're napping, then you can go into the hypnagogic space and then come out of it again without disrupting anything and without and having it be kind of a normal experience. So when I'm actually teaching people how to locate and linger in liminal, naps is one of the things that I really advise. There's this exercise that was developed by Salvador Dali and Thomas Edison independently of each other. And there's a version of it that a lot of other people use, because hypnagogia is a great space for amping up creativity. And in fact, the talk that I give, often what I consider my sort of basic talk, where I'm introducing people to hypnagogia. I wrote a whole bunch of it in hypnagogia using these practices. And what the practice is they would, when they were really sleepy, they would get into like a super coma position, not lying down. Think of it like a big easy chair. You can also do it lying down, like on your couch or something. And Edison, sitting up, Edison would hold a ball in each hand, and Dolly would hold a big brass Spanish key. I love, he's so specific about it. And with metal plates on the ground. And Edison kept a notebook and pen near him, and Dolly kept a sketch pad. And they would lean back and go into hypnagogia, holding either the balls or the key over the plates. And then as soon as they started to actually fall asleep, they would naturally let go and drop the ball or the key, which would clatter onto the metal plate and wake them. And Edison would immediately start writing down ideas, and Dolly would immediately start sketching. And that's how both of them a lot of their ideas. And Edison invented like everything we use in the modern world. And a lot of his inventions he came up with in hypnagogia.
Amazing.
Yeah, and so you can do that exercise with like a jingly dog toy or a handful of change or whatever. And that's a great way of like napping and going into the space and waking yourself to finally go deeper in.
Yeah, I really liked your I think you wrote it in your book about how you kind of just would sometimes use like an iPad or something that you'll like kind of look into, and then as you're drifting off, you can just kind of scribble what's going on, like half in that liminal dream space, half in the waking state, right?
Yeah, that's that the iPad exercise was the modern scrying. The British esotericist Julian Vane, who I know, had this practice, so the ancient practice of scrying, where you're looking into the, like John Dee, looking into the shoe stone, trying to, contact the spirits or whatever. And his modern practice of it was to get an iPad, something with a really reflective surface, basically, and to look into it in hypnagogia and try to like, stay awake enough to sort of see what he saw there. That's a
so
fun.
Cool. I love that. And obviously a lot of my audience are lucid dreamers. So, and you write a bit about, the connection between the two states. I know a lot of people use liminal dreaming to induce a lucid dream. So is that something you do regularly as well? Or tell us a bit more about the connection between those two states.
Sure. And some of the most traditional lucid dreamers are, of course, certain forms of Tibetan Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhists, and people would know from like Namkhai Norbu's amazing book Natural Light, or more recently Andrew Holchek's wonderful book about dream yoga. And if you read these, you realize that for the Tibetan Buddhists, the path into the lucid dream is the liminal dream, is learning ability with liminal dreaming, and practices of mild or wild, like using hypnagogia as a bridge into lucid dream space. And the way that those work, and really it's also about developing developing skills in visualization. So imagination is the portal into the liminal dream, and the liminal dream is the portal into the lucid dream, right? So like when I'm giving meditations or yoga nidra to help people find liminal dream, often the first thing that happens is your imagination starts to loosen, and you're getting images or memories or whatever. So if you going into a liminal dream, so like one of the common practices for using liminal dream is to find lucid dream. So the first thing is to develop your visualization skill, right? So just sometimes, when at night, when you're in bed, or you just do it during the day, close your eyes and try to really amp up your ability to visualize. So imagine a square and color of it, stretch it out, flip it over, put a dot in the middle of it, and then make the dot bigger or smaller. Hindu yantras, sometimes they're very simple, a dot inside a circle, or more complicated, are great tools to use for visualization. So, develop, like lifting weights, develop your visualization skills. The Tibetan Buddhists would do these incredible ornate meditations with like 64 deities, where you can see the tassels, the whites of their eyes, that kind of thing. So really get your visualization skills down pat. And then in liminal dream space, basically what you're doing is you're remember a dream where that when you dream that a place that you want to revisit, and really be able to not just visualize but deeply experience that dream. Was it in the sun? Can you feel the quality of the heat on your skin? What did you see? Can you really visualize it? Really place yourself in that dream when you're in the hypnagogic dream, and then let the and then from really keep, and of course it's hypnagogic, so your attention will drift, and learn to bring it back into the dream space, and then the hypnagogia can just go into the lucid dream. And then you can also do it with hypnopompia, and that's when you're waking up. And actually, in a way, that's easier, because usually we go, when we're waking up, usually we go from REM into hypnopompia when we're waking up, if you look at the chart of a night's sleep. So if you, but it's, of course, it's harder, because it's harder to control hypnopompia because you're going from sleeping mind. But also, if you find yourself in hypnopompia in the morning, again, do these visualizations and try to go back into the dream, because the border between REM and hypnopompia is quite permeable. Wild and mild.
Cool. It makes a lot of sense. And would you say there's differences to the hypnopompic and hypnagogic states, or are they the same thing, just at either end, or do they create like differences in dreams and visuals and all of that?
And this is a point at which in which I differ from some of my colleagues, because some people say, well, the brain waves are the same, but it's not. They're very different. So hypnagogia, you're leading with the conscious mind, right? The conscious mind is slowly going offline. So, and that's one of the reasons hypnagogia is easier to work with. In hypnagogia, you're kind of leading with conscious mind. And so, as you're sinking into the space, and your conscious mind is kind of starting to dissolve a little bit, and your dreaming mind is coming online, your conscious mind can be like, oh, wow, look, check it out. I'm falling into a dream. Oh, I'm dreaming. It's much easier to maintain that through line. Whereas Pompia, you're coming out of sleep, and you have to have been asleep for a while to go into hypnopompia. So, right. So you're basically, it's your dreaming mind slowly coming back online into waking mind, right? And so you're leading with your dreaming mind, and so you're having the consciousness come back in, happens more at the other end of the spectrum. So it's a hazier, harder to maintain consciousness in state of mind. And anybody who has like short, fast circadian rhythm, those kind of people often don't really even experience hypnopompia. Like my spouse, like if you're the kind of person who wakes up, bing, you're wide awake. If when you start working, you're best when you're freshest and you wear down. If you tend to go to bed early, at the party, you're like the first person who's kind of ready to go home. If that's you, then you probably have a short, fast circadian rhythm. And it's probably not that many people on this because those people don't have a really hard time remembering REM. People often come up to me and say, what's wrong with me? I don't remember my dreams. My partner remembers their dreams. And most of the time it's just circadian rhythm. We inherit our circadian rhythms. You can change them with a lot of effort, as anybody with a little baby or who night shift knows. But as a general rule, we inherit our circadian rhythms. And so those people are not going to remember their REM dreams because they wake up too fast. So hypnagogia is really their dream space. So yeah, hypnagogia and hypopnea definitely have very different qualities. And and boy, some people write about hypnagogia, but there's sure almost nobody else talking about hypnopompic. Charlie Morley, whose work you probably know,
yeah.
He talks about hypnopompic a little bit, but really almost nobody, partly just because it's so difficult to, unless you're a natural. Boy, it's my favorite thing in the world, hypnopompic.
I was gonna say, yeah, me too. I'm very much the opposite to my husband. He's like a 4 a.m. get up, go to the gym kind of guy, whereas I'm a like go back to sleep a little bit, and like in that kind of state I can collect 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 dreams just upon awakening again and again a little bit. So I love messing with that kind of liminal wake up state. We have another great question from Casey, Gravitational Love on Instagram. He says, how long can liminal dreams last for? And do you have longer liminal states that lead to different kinds of dreams versus, if you're just going from wake to sleep quite quickly?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Of all the brainwave states that we go through naturally, hypnagogia and hypnopompic are by far the shortest ones. They're very chaotic. All of the brainwaves that are present in other states, most brainwave states are marked by one particular sine wave. So delta, the deepest sleep, is like 0.5 to 3 waves per second. Gamma, which is the most excited, and which is associated with lucid dreaming, is like 40 waves per second. For example, and there's like 8 of these that we go through naturally most of the states. But in hypnagogia and hypopnea, there's like 6 brain waves going on at once. All the brain waves that we have are kind of present in this chaotic pattern. So it's kind of this chaotic time when when your consciousness is changing, right? And the sort of the continuity of consciousness, it's that weird middle state. So it's the fastest one. And naturally, we're often only in it for minutes. But you really learn to expand that out. Overtraining I have. And when I was writing the book, I would sometimes, really stay for, hour more in hypnagogia or in hypnopompic, really learning to surf where that edge is, learning, finding, think of it like surfing consciousness. It's great because if the metaphor for consciousness is often awake as land and asleep as ocean, and where ocean and land meet is where the waves are really chaotic, just like the brain waves, and that's where you surf, right? You can really learn to stay in hypnagogia by okay, I'm starting to wake up, I'm going to settle back down into sleep. I'm starting to drift, I'm going to give myself a little mental juice. So you can stay there for a long time. And the longer you stay there, definitely the quality of the dreams change. So at the lightest level, it's very free associative, and there's it's a lot of memory, super vivid childhood memory. When I was first discovering this, for example, the public pool where we used to go when I was a kid, and the vivid memory of my sister's bathing suit and the smell of chlorine, and remembering what the locker room looked like and the layout, that thing. And then as you get deeper in, starting to have patterns and colors that are sort of moving and shifting, and then deeper in, actually, you will start to get more of what you're familiar with of dream is kind of dream narrative, like a dream story. It's not quite the same as a REM dream. It isn't quite it's just like being awake, except you're asleep and it's weirder. It is slightly different, but it does have more narrative quality, and yourself starts to be more present. And that's kind of what happens as you get into sort of the deepest levels when ultimately you can find that place, and this is liminal dreaming. I mean, it's very hard to find, but sometimes you can find that place where your body is asleep and you're still awake. And that's an incredibly expansive feeling. They do tend to be narrative dream, but just the experience of the consciousness when your body is a really remarkable feeling. So yeah, definitely they change. That's a really good question, and they definitely change, and you definitely can expand them out.
And can they work in, do you notice particular patterns? Like the more you get into it, like the more you practice and build up those visualizations, like can they come with patterns or series, or, how some people will have a whole series of dreams that have like a similar essence to them?
I'll have like a, so for example, there, and I think this one is in the book, where there's like I wrote down my longer liminal dream experiences, where it was just, there were certain things that were arising, like the color purple was in there, and this like this kind of like Persian rug pattern, or there'll be a particular sound that was in there, and so that experience will come. One of the things that I started to do when I was at the deepest point of these practices is, and again, it comes from an experience that I had when I was studying Yoga Nidra, because that's a great way to bring people into Gajas through Yoga Nidra. So I teach Yoga Nidra. But when I was doing teacher training, realizing that I could have different tracks of dream happening all at once, right? So I've had like, and so it's like, I don't know if you've ever had the experience where you've had more than one dream happening simultaneously,
Yeah.
And I really started to be able to do that with liminal dreaming, and getting as high as like 4 or 5 different dreams all happening at the same time, where I can zoom into like really incredibly fine detail, or zoom out and see the whole thing at large, and and where they're all happening simultaneously. It was a very crazy psychedelic experience, so that probably where I was able to spin out almost like into different realities that are running simultaneously.
So cool. I love this. And what would you say for people who want to, give this a go today, even maybe, or after watching this, like what's the best way to induce one for a total beginner, and like how would you recommend they record it?
So napping, as we said earlier, is fantastic. You can try the Dolly Edison exercise, which is you can hold something that you'll drop. You can even just nap arm in the air, although some people find it too hard to go into nap space. One of the things that I love doing is there's a lot of phone apps that have voice activated recorders, and they're $5 or something. They're pretty cheap. And voice activated recorder. So I use Voice Memos Pro, but it's not because I think that one's particularly better than other ones. It just happens to be the one I have. And you can set it to voice activated and put it near you, and and then lie down. Try not to go, as a beginner, try not to go exactly into how you would normally fall asleep. So if you're going to do it on your bed, switch around so your head is at the foot of the bed, for example. Just something so that it's a little bit different. Do it when you're sort of sleepy, and then start to drift into the space, right? Like start to drift into sleep, and look for when the dream starts to form. Look for when you start to have images, when you start to have, when your imagination really starts to loosen. That's the liminal dream space, and go into it. And then you can actually just start talking. And that's one of the things that's great about the voice activated recorder, is you don't even have to lean over and do anything. You can just start to sort of mumble out the dream. That's a great way to do it. Now, public is a great way to do it, or in a car, not when you're driving. Although sadly, that's, I mean, when you're, when you're driving, we've probably a lot of, and you start to kind of hallucinate because you're really tired, you're going into hypnagogia. But cars are great, get in the back seat and go into drifty, go lie down in the park if you feel safe enough and go into those drifty spaces. And then really just pay attention when you're going to sleep tonight. Just pay attention as you're falling asleep, because you go there anyway.
Yeah, I actually love one of your methods that you share in your book as well, of like, when you're just at a party and it's getting to the end of the night and you kind of just sit down in a chair and you're like listening to the conversations and then kind of going in and out. I know I'm one of those people that does that at parties, like I don't drink, so it's just like when everyone's getting to that stage, I find myself sitting in a chair and being like, oh, well, great time for some liminal dream work, right?
Yeah, a party, great place, actually, because then there's going on and you can listen to the conversations and you're kind of safe, but there's enough to keep your mind awake. That's a great way to find it.
Love it. What are you working on at the moment? Like you mentioned, you are a rare gem that's exploring the liminal dream states. And I'm so curious to hear, like, how is your practice expanding? Are there particular things you're exploring at the moment, or what kind of exciting things can we expect from you in the future?
Right now, I'm interested in death. I had the experience when my aunt was dying when I was writing the book. My aunt and I were very close, and so I did deathbed. I took care of her over the process of time when she was dying. And one of the things that there was a time once her conscious mind had gone offline and never returned, but there was a couple of weeks when she would be mumbling, she would be talking, and I realized she was in hypnagogia. And so, I'm practiced at talking to people in hypnagogia because I do it a lot. And I was like, wait, she's in hypnagogia. And so she would be, talking about being at the shopping mall with Ziggy Stardust and her neighbors and their talking dogs. And I'd be like, Robin, what's Ziggy Stardust wearing? You can have conversations with people who are in hypnagogia. They're not linear. It's not like she would answer my question, but it would make her sort of kind of continue. So I was like, wow, and if I hadn't been practiced in hypnagogia, that I would have lost that whole extra 2 weeks of her. And in fact, it freaked out everybody else in my family. Everyone was like, no, Robin, you're not in the shopping mall with Ziggy Stardust. And I'd be like, well, let her be in the shopping mall with Ziggy Stardust. And I later learned, really coincidentally, she died in Buffalo, New York, which is where I'm from. And the guy who ran the hospice, the director of the hospice where she died, Dr. Christopher Kerr, has actually just written a book called Death is But a Dream. And one of the things that he's writing about is the fact that dying people are often in hypnagogia.
Wow.
Yeah, and this was a real eye-opener for me. So think about it, like the liminal zone between waking and sleeping is also the liminal zone between life and death. Obviously not everybody does it, but for a lot of people. And so I really got interested in this dying process and in its relationship to hypnagogia. So I'm actually right now in a Buddhist chaplaincy program started by the formidable Joan Halifax, where I'm training to accompany people who are dying to, help, sort of psychopomp, to help usher people through the process of dying. And, as this sort of, its relationship to hypnagogia in this liminal mind state. So the hypnagogia and its relationship to death has led me down this track. So continued adventures in tracking people's mind states.
That's amazing. I love that you're doing that. And I know that, especially for people who are dying, like a lot of people are scared, also family members get scared, and it's this kind of topic that we're not supposed to really talk much about, right? And everyone grieves in different ways. So definitely for me as well, like lucid dream work has been a fantastic modality, dreams in general, for kind of continuing that connection with people who are passing or people who have passed on. dreams do seem to be this extra kind of thread between life and death, right?
Absolutely. And all the unusual experiences that people will talk about in terms of dreams often are, you know, somebody dies and in a dream somebody becomes that kind of thing. There's a question there about wouldn't people dying be hypnopompic instead of hypnagogic? And the answer is no, because again, hypnopompic is coming from the unconscious into the conscious. It's the conscious mind coming online over that, you know, the continuity of consciousness, that spectrum. Hypnopomia is going from the unconscious into the conscious. And the hypnagogic, hypnos is the god of sleep. Agogos is going toward, whereas pompe is going away from, like pomp and circumstance. So the hypnagogic is going toward the unconscious. So it's also going toward the death.
Amazing. And I know you've mentioned, you know, in this talk, obviously liminal dreams great for like creativity, obviously incredible for the new work you're doing in connection to death and dying. What are some of the other benefits of these states that you've seen, or what are a lot of your students, you know, using this work for? Like, why should people be interested in it, or what benefits can they get from it?
Great for healing, both physical and psychological. And in fact, the Jung, the practice of active imagination, which is a hypnagogic practice, you know, when Jung had his famous falling out with Freud, and basically it sent him into a tailspin that he himself said was, you know, was a form of insanity, and he cured himself, you know, whatever, using active imagination. And this is this practice, and it's a wonderful practice. And Jung thought it was enough, you know, for in terms of like therapy or whatever, it was enough to heal your psychic woes. And what he would do is he would go, and here's what the practice is go into hypnagogia, go into the space, and then when you come out, engage whatever happened in hypnagogia creatively, right? So you can draw or paint or sculpt, bead, shoe, you know, you can videotape yourself dancing, you know, and choreograph. And the point is not to create a museum ready piece. The point is to creatively engage what happened in hypnagogia. And then you keep going in and out of hypnagogia until the piece is done. And it might be hours, it might be days, it might be weeks, it might be months, it might be years. And in fact, Jung's Red Book, which is, you know, beautiful, beautiful art, is actually a document of his active imagination practices, trying to recover from this Freud, you know, which sent him into sort of a form of insanity. And so he would go into the hypnagogia and then come out and would paint, you know. And so it's just a great process of basically you're engaging your own unconscious. And one of the things that's amazing about liminal dream space is that you go into the unconscious dream space, you can experience it, but you have enough waking consciousness to bring it back. You know, your ego does kind of go offline, so your ego isn't driving the show. You know, your ego isn't like, well, you know, I have to make this, wait, I want more purple or whatever. Like, you don't really have control over it, but you can bring it back. So it's great for therapeutic healing, great for physical healing. I mean, think about what your body does when you're sick, right? You sleep. Going into these spaces is a wonderful healing, you know, and so it's, you know, to go in and give your body rest and give your mind rest. It's a wonderful space for that. It's an amazing kind of a form of meditation, if you can really go into it, because your consciousness really gets reduced into like the single point now, right? Because there's not the same relationship, me and the world. All there is the unfolding moment. And if you can really train yourself to follow that unfolding moment, then you really are, you know, you really help train your mind into just being in this now, into just sort of letting, you know, kind of what is unfold. There's a lot of ways to use it.
I love that. It's amazing. Yeah, I think when you're working with your mind and creativity, the possibilities are really endless in terms of that and what you can do with it. Thank you so much for answering some complex and incredibly interesting questions. Is there anything before we finish that like you want to mention that we haven't touched on in this conversation, or something that you want to say in connection to this work?
I'm honestly such a strong believer in the power of liminal dreaming. And it's an amazing way of exploring your own consciousness. It gives you anything that like a psychedelic would give you, or that kind of thing. But it's like this free, legal, no hangover. You can drop into it anytime. You'll learn so much about your own mind. You'll have these astounding experiences. You'll get into these like healing modalities. It opens your creativity. Really getting into liminal dreaming as a practice has been one of the greatest boons of my life. It really is so wonderful for so many things.
Love that. And I always like to ask everyone, is there another dream worker? I can't guarantee I could get them on here, but someone that you would like to like pick their mind, or someone that you think would be interesting for this series?
So many. I'm going to give you two. Ruben Nyman is an amazing dreamer, and his understanding of what we're doing in dream spaces and how it relates to a waking world is great. So Ruben Nyman is fantastic. And Charlie Morley also is really going to very, very, very interesting spaces. But this is this is field. Whatever. There's Ryan Hurd, and there's so many amazing dreams. Tree Carr is amazing. There's so many amazing dreamers. People doing amazing things.
Thanks so much, Jennifer. Before we finish, just one last time, let us know where people can find you, connect to you. Like, I'm obsessed with your Twitter. You post a dream every single day for like the past 12 years. Is that right? It's amazing. So where can people connect to you or join this group that you're running?
Yeah, so the Twitter is at Oneirofer, Oneirofer, Oneirofer. My dream group you can find out about by looking at my website, which is urbandreamscape.com, liminaldreaming.com. They're all attached like a house with too many bad additions. Or you can go to the San Francisco Psychedelic Society. They sponsor my dream circle. It's on Facebook at Liminal Dreaming. My SoundCloud is under my name, and that's just me, babbling out hypnagogia.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time today, Jennifer, and looking forward to catching up with you and hearing more about the amazing work that you do. We appreciate you so much.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate your work quite a lot, and this has been really fun.
Thank you. I'll have to get you back again soon, I think.
I'd love to.
Bye.
Bye.